Hello and welcome to the Q&A edition of the Cosmetics Business Podcast. I'm Sarah Parsons.
And I'm Julia Wray. Hey Sarah, how are you doing?
I'm good. I am actually off on holiday this week.
You lucky thing. Where are you going to?
South of France. My other half sister has a house there, so I'm just going to read and relax and eat lovely, gorgeous food.
Does she want a house sitter at all, ever?
Probably. I can ask her.
Please do. It sounds delightful.
How's your week?
Decent. Obviously, on top of my cosmetics business activities, I head up the editorial team at HBC Media. So I've been doing appraisals. So lots of meetings, telling my team how fantastic they are, because they are fantastic.
Thank you very much.
And talking about the future, and where we can go and grow stronger and better from here. So yes, been busy but rewarding.
Cool. Shall we go into our first question?
I think that's a great idea. Let's.
Cool. So our first question comes from @Dora9.10. Thank you, Dora9.10 on Instagram. And she asks, can you highlight, I assume it's a girl, I'm sorry if you're not, can you highlight the top beauty tech / virtual makeup providers right now on the market?
Ooh, great question there.
Yeah, it is a good question, and it is a tough market to decipher.
It is a tough market. It's a growing market, and it's a continually evolving market. Mm-hmm. So if I were to pick any one company in this area to flag, to highlight, it would be Perfect Corp.
Yeah.
So Perfect Corp, I think there are two companies which I would say really kicked off this, this tech virtual makeup provider space a couple of years back. And that was Perfect Corp and also Modiface, which is now owned by the mighty L'Oreal. And if L'Oreal spot that something is worth onboarding, then it is absolutely a trend of the future. And what's interesting, so Perfect Corp, to swing back to them, they are huge in augmented reality and artificial intelligence for the beauty business. It's a female-founded tech brand, which always makes me feel like I want to give it a little bit more support and juice as well, because women are unicorns in tech still, and they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But yeah. So one of the things that they do is augmented reality makeup.
And we're talking about trial filters.
Trials. So yes, basically, when you go online or, sometimes you have booths and stands in store.
Or on your phone.
Yeah, or on your phone. So what you have the ability to trial a product before buying it, which is obviously fantastic, because you aren't necessarily, sometimes you're taking a bit of a punt on something.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And it's nice to see what it looks like with your skin tone.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is that these things are becoming so much more sophisticated than they were initially, because I don't know whether you tried these out a couple of years ago when they first started. It looks a little bit like you had one of those weird, digital masks on.
Yeah,
right?
It looked like it was literally sitting on your face. And they're quite fun because you can flick through different shades of lipstick or eyes and stuff like that, but they didn't blend seamlessly.
I mean, that viral video, that woman who accidentally got stuck as a potato during lockdown meeting on Teams or whatever it was, and her little mouth was just, that was kind of the vibe, right?
Or there was the judge who was a cat.
Oh, the cat. Oh my God, I'm not a cat. It's really, we didn't know that. Are you eloquent for a cat? No, that was great. Flashback. But yeah, so for Perfect Corp, now you'll see that they are so true to life. So you don't just have, obviously, the colour, but you also have how the texture looks. Now, it's never going to be exactly like the experience of trying something on. There's nothing quite like, well, having said that, if you're trying a tester on your lips in store, you are a disgusting human being. You have to try it on your hand.
Yeah,
but
don't do that. Please don't.
Please don't be that person. But there is nothing that quite replicates the experience of putting a lipstick on your lips and feeling, is it dry? Does it feel like it's a bit weak and I'm going to eat this off when I have my first bite of food for the day or my coffee in the morning? So you don't necessarily get that vibe. But what you do get is a realistic depiction of what the texture looks like, even if you're not getting the feel. You're also getting things like matching the light reflection, for example. Ooh. Which is, so if you're having a gloss, obviously it's not about the colour. You're going to, and everyone's lips are slightly different. So it takes into account things like the topography of your individual lips, plus the product, how much of a, sheen it's going to have. So all these kind of things, which we didn't used to have. Now they really are very, very sophisticated. Yeah. I was having a bit of a play and I was quite surprised and shocked by how much they come on since the last time I'd had a dabble. Have you had a play with any of these at all?
Yeah, so I've had a play with a few over the years, and they have definitely come on quite considerably. And so the couple that I was looking at in terms of this like AR makeup filters providers, so I was looking at Banuba. And
so what's Banuba then?
So it's similar, same kind of concept, but they've worked with brands like Gucci on its makeup line.
Fantastic.
And similar to what you were saying, they've always focused on like very realistic, and they actually say their products can be used on photo shoots or instead of like expensive photo shoots. So rather than paying for like a model to spend all her day there, or in a makeup artist to constantly wipe off the makeup, put it back on, you just use their product.
So part of me thinks that's absolutely fantastic. The other part of me thinks, my God, somebody's trained to be a makeup artist and is now being replaced by AI. I feel like there's a lot of jobs out there. We spoke about this in the last podcast, which are being, slightly undermined. In some cases, in other cases enhanced, but in some cases undermined by the possibilities of AI. So part of me thinks, oh, that's fantastic. Another part of me thinks,
And there are some regulatory issues around
Yeah.
that. You can't go selling mascara and saying like, oh, this is, makes your lashes 3 times longer. And if you're using augmented reality to do that, you cannot do that.
You can't do that. That would be contravening all kind of FTC,
Yes.
advertising laws as well.
Absolutely. But there are ways around certain things. So perhaps if you're working with editorial companies, or if you're working on in terms of just more lifestyle campaigns, that can be a bit different.
I wonder if I noticed that, if I saw one. We see so many of these come through our inboxes,
It's
right?
so it's so
I don't think I
realistic.
would, no.
I don't think I would. And the other one I was looking at was Visage Technologies, and so they're a Swedish-based company, and they started out with face tracking, and they've expanded into beauty. And I thought they were interesting.
So like face tracking, like there's this person that we want to spot, or strangers in the
Yeah, so they've got a really interesting background, and they work a lot with
police.
Yeah, they also work a lot with like education institutions. So perhaps if you're wanting a makeup provider, or if you want to market your product and your technology down a more academic background, then that could be one for you.
Interesting, very interesting. So I have one here which is called Revive as well. I don't know as much about them as Perfect Corp, but I do know that they specialize in AI and AR-powered solutions. And they've got, again, a really good list of companies using them: Oriflame, Shiseido, and on the Unilever Prestige side, you have Murads and Living Proof are listed among its clients on its website as well. So, what I really like to see as well is not just that there's so much of these out there, but there are so many brands that are working with them already.
Yeah.
So our next question comes in from Effie Asafu Ajaye. Apologies if I got that wrong. And she asks, I'd love to hear your take on the rise of the de-influencing movement. Great question. So she adds, on one side, there are voices challenging the glamorization of beauty hauls and criticizing the fast pace of TikTok's beauty trends and overconsumption. Yet on the other side, we see the growth of TikTok shops and affiliates, with brands celebrating massive sales volumes on the platform. It's such an interesting moment in time for the industry, and it would be great to hear Julia and Sarah's perspective on this. Fantastic question. Very well worded. I think you almost summed it up slightly in the question.
Yeah.
Sarah, what do you think?
Well, thank you, Effie. That is a really good question, and she's not wrong at all. The fact that brands are celebrating massive sales volumes on the platform, and regularly on Cosmetics Business, we are writing stories and strategy pieces on how brands can make £1 million in sales within 24 hours.
And they're not big brands, some of them.
No.
They are upstart brands, which is
Absolutely.
fantastic.
So in relation to like the de-influencing trend, my perspective on it is that it's been a long time coming in the making. And I believe that is because there's been a gap in the market that journalists have not provided, specifically beauty journalists.
So where have beauty journalists as a whole gone wrong historically that has created this movement?
So de-influencing, if we just want to backpedal, just for those who don't know, de-influencing is essentially a negative review by a content creator. It's a person with a presence online telling their audience why often very popular and viral products aren't worth the hype, and or they aren't as good as what they seem to be. In relation to journalism, well, that content, that concept of negative reviews just doesn't exist. You will not see a beauty journalist or beauty editor give a negative review about a product on their website or on their publisher's website. And that is simply because of advertising. That is simply because they are more likely by their boss to be like, oh, include this person, include this brand in the article because it will keep the advertiser happy. Or on top of that as well, you've got affiliate marketing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's in the journalist's best interest, who often have targets as well, to only want to do positive stories, because they'll want to only do things that will help with that affiliate marketing program and to keep the advertisers happy.
So what's the upshot of that, Ben?
So in terms of where that has filled, where that gap has happened, it's not like restaurant reviews or theatre critics who can put really damning reviews out, because let's face it, restaurants aren't key advertisers.
No,
they're not. So that's resulted in people wanting honest reviews and wanting things like,
we need the Grace Dent of the beauty world.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need to think about and respect your audience. They are spending their hard-earned money on products, and they're often saving up their money,
and their decision-making process will be influenced by what they read.
Exactly. So that's given the rise of influencers, and in turn, this de-influencing movement that's happening. Mm-hmm. So what do you think?
Well, I think it's an interesting movement overall. I think one of the facets of it is that, firstly, you're absolutely right. It fills that perceived gap in honest reviews. Having said that, it's not entirely immune to influence, outside influence. And while I know that, for example, we have the SA and various regional versions, I mentioned the FTC in the US, kind of cracking down on hashtag spawn, hashtag ads, when something is very blatantly paid for and promoted. When it comes to anti-affiliation, are such laws in place? Are there such, or do we have yet to catch up on this behaviour from a regulatory point of view? Because quite easily, a company could pay for a negative review of another company's product.
Oh yeah, and that happens. That absolutely happens.
And that should be illegal. But I don't think there's as much awareness maybe from the authorities around it as there is for somebody very blatantly advertising something paid for, but not actually declaring it as an advert.
And that is a problem with influencers. It is similar to beauty journalists, consumer beauty journalists. It is in their best interest to want to promote product. So whilst de-influencing might have started out as a very honest, ethical, anti-consumerist movement.
And filling that need, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and it is not in the influencer economy, which is booming year on year, to want to stop influencing you, to only do content like, oh, don't buy this, don't buy that. And you do get actually some influencers that just focus on like, don't spend your money here, don't spend your money that. And they perhaps don't even mention brands, they just talk about topics in general. For example, like, don't buy coffee out and things like that.
There is obviously part of this, there is an overconsumption angle and a reduction in overconsumption. And I have to admit,
it's so niche.
I get it. I get it. It's, the whole ethos is like, if you need it, here's some advice, here's my picks, get this one, not that one, but only get this if you really actually need to get it. And I like that. But the fact that somebody is still, as you're saying, it's not in the influencer's nature, the fact that somebody is still influencing for that, it feels a little bit like when you see a delicious chocolate cake and you're like, oh, I'm going to have that chocolate cake. It's selling itself to me. And look at the side and the calorie counts on there.
Yes.
That's almost like the manufacturer's, in that case's way of going, oh, this is on you. We're going to say this is there, but this one is on you.
Yeah.
I feel that feels like the de-influencing thing feels a little bit like that. Like, okay, so this exists if you really need it.
Yeah.
If you really have to consume, but don't consume.
Yeah. And I conveniently have an affiliate link to that you can click on and I can get a percentage off.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And I feel like, that's my equivalent of that tasty chocolate cake telling me that it's going to be like 700 calories. Like, that's the equivalent thereof. I'll be like, I'll get it. And then I feel bad. But you feel absolved because you told me that this is on you now.
Yeah. And it's better than the other thing that I'm supposed to be buying, that everyone's telling me about, but no, this chocolate cake is way better.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Always comes back to chocolate with me.
Yeah, it's true. So de-influencing, whilst it's very fascinating, is very a niche market, and it is just another take on something that's already been there, whether that's negative reviews or if it's underhand PR tactics.
It's sometimes I sometimes feel with some of the social media trends that are the anti ones. Like, I always feel it's just mining another reason to get yourself out there, to speak to people, and then to monetize it, which obviously everyone has to make a living. But this kind of feels a little bit like that as well.
Absolutely. So I think that's all for today, actually.
Certainly some interesting questions there, guys.
Indeed, and keep them coming. Send us a message on the normal podcast platforms, social media, or email cosmetics@hpcimedia.com.
Thank you for listening. I will see you next week.
See you next week. In the meantime, stay up to date with the latest beauty news, trends, and analysis by subscribing to cosmeticsbusiness.com.